Okay, so I'm going to teach you guys this next topic of eliminating sensual desire and ill will. I refer to this, and the Buddha refers to it as laying down the burden and transforming the mind away from anger. Because when we talk about craving, desire, attachment on the path to enlightenment, we're essentially talking about sensual desire. There are other cravings, desires, attachments that are part of the 10 fetters that you guys are going to learn about, but by and large, the vast majority of it is sensual desire. So I'm going to explain this to you in detail. And these two go together. This is fetter 4 and fetter 5. Because when the mind's not getting what it wants, it's going to experience ill will, as you guys are going to see here. So let me just flip on the visual aids. So let's talk about what sensual desire is. What sensual desire is where there's desire for pleasure from the 6 sense bases of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself. This is inside the mind. The mind is longing, yearning through the sense bases, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. So if you see things with your eye that are agreeable to you, you'll get pleasant feelings. But then when you see something that is disagreeable to you, your mind is going to get painful feelings. This is the wants and the expectations, the longing, the yearning. So I'll give you some examples. Say you're walking down the street and you see a young child holding their parent's hand. You might be like, that's so beautiful. That's so lovely. Look at that little child walking across the street holding their parent's hand. That brings me such happiness. But now you turn the corner and you see a parent slap their child across their face. This is disagreeable to you, perhaps, and now you get frustrated. You get angry. What the mind's doing here is it's craving permanence. It's craving permanently agreeable contact through the eyes. You want to see things that are permanently agreeable. The same thing's happening with all of these sense bases, not just the eyes, but the ears too. If you're at a stoplight and somebody pulls up to you with music that you're hearing in your ears and you particularly like that music, maybe it's rap or hip hop, you're like, all right, yeah, that's my jam. All right, come on, let's go, let's dance, right? But now you pull up to the next traffic light and maybe somebody has some other music on that you don't particularly like. Maybe it's heavy metal or instrumental music or something else. And you're like, oh, gosh, that guy, you get so frustrated. And you think that other person is what's causing it. But what's really causing it is your sensual desire. The mind is longing, yearning through these sense bases, wanting permanently agreeable contact. But you live in an impermanent world. You can't experience permanently agreeable contact. So based on your cravings within your own mind, your mind's going to be longing, yearning through these sense bases. So say like the nose, say you're in the mall and you're walking behind somebody and they have a particular perfume or cologne on and you're like, whoa, that smells good. Oh my goodness. Or maybe you're at the food court. Wow, that pizza smells amazing. Oh, or that caramel popcorn, right? Oh, it smells amazing. Right? But now you're walking down the street and you get a whiff of the sewer and now your mind's repulsed by it. Oh, God, that's horrible. Right? The mind starts complaining, right? Because you've experienced contact through the sense bases. You've got an odor that your mind agreed with the perfume or the food court smells. But now when you're getting this odor of the sewer, the mind's repulsed by it. And this is because the mind's sensual desire. It's craving permanently agreeable contact. The same thing's happening with the tongue. Maybe if you eat chocolate, maybe you feel so happy about that. But now if you eat something else on the tongue, I don't know what you might find to be disagreeable, but you might be repulsed by it. At one time, I used to think durian was disagreeable. I had a craving to not eat durian, right? I don't know if you guys have ever had durian. It's a fruit here in Asia. It kind of smells like poop. Right? Some people love the smell. They think it's great. It's agreeable to them. Other people despise it. They think it's repulsive. They think it smells like poop. I used to think it smells like poop, right? And when I used to put it in my mouth, I never had poop on my mouth before, but if I did, I think it would kind of feel like this, the consistency of it, right? It was like, whoa, that kind of like smells like poop. It feels like poop. Oh, I've got poop in my mouth, right? So this is what the mind does, is because of its craving, it'll push these things away. Right? It'll be repulsed by these things. So there's probably certain foods that you try to avoid at all cost because you find it to be disagreeable. And that's based on your sensual desire. There's certain foods that you like and that you find to be wonderful, and then there's certain things that you don't like and you push that away. That's because of the sensual desire. The mind is longing, yearning for this permanently agreeable contact. And then the same thing's happening with the body. There's certain physical objects that come in contact with the body, maybe certain fabrics or something like this that you find to be very pleasing and agreeable to you. But now when certain things touch the body that you don't agree with, say you're walking down the street and someone bumps into you, maybe you get frustrated or agitated because this contact with the physical body was disagreeable to you, right? This is where the mind experiences pleasant feelings if you have agreeable contact, and painful feelings if you have disagreeable contact. And now, lastly, the mind. The Buddha considers the mind to be the sixth sense base, because in the present moment, you can be thinking about something from the past, and now you can experience either pleasure or pain based on those thoughts. So let's just say you were really wealthy in the past and you're remembering all those things you used to have and enjoy when you were wealthy. Now you get all these pleasant feelings as a result. But now in the present moment, you don't have those things. So now the mind's frustrated and agitated or annoyed, right? Or you can be thinking about some traumatic experience that happened in the past. Maybe you got beat up on the street, or maybe you got some other issue that's happened, and now maybe you're thinking back to that. Maybe there was some boss that fired you, or maybe there was a boyfriend or girlfriend who was vindictive or angry and talked to you in unkind ways. And now when your mind's thinking about that, you haven't had contact. There hasn't been any contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or body, but the mind itself is thinking about something in the past, and now in the present moment, you're having either pleasant feelings or painful feelings. And then the same thing can happen about the future. The mind can be thinking about something in the future and either having pleasant feelings or painful feelings. Say you're getting ready to go on a trip to somewhere. You can get so excited about this trip. You're thinking about it in the future. You haven't had any contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or body, but the mind is just thinking about this thing. Or maybe you're thinking about something in the future and now you're having stress and anxiety and you're worried. This is the mind having painful feelings just from the mind itself, right? So any kind of discontentedness that you experience, it's coming through these six sense bases. These are doorways to the mind. And now the mind is experiencing contact through these doorways. And because of your craving, desire, attachment, your longing, your yearning, you're seeing these things either as agreeable or disagreeable. And if it's agreeable, you get pleasant feelings. If it's disagreeable, you get the painful feelings. And this is what the mind's experiencing. The mind's going to be wanting this lasting satisfaction through these doorways. It wants permanently agreeable contact. Every time you've ever been angry or frustrated or irritated or any other discontent feeling, you can actually trace it back to the doorway. There's some doorway that some contact has come through. So remember, the Buddha is not explaining to you rules and commandments. He's not teaching you the way the world should be, right? He's not helping you to have these beliefs so that when you die, something good will happen. He's explaining to you what you're experiencing right now. He's explaining to you these natural laws. And he's explaining to you that you're going to become discontent when you have contact through these doorways. If you have craving in your mind, if you have sensual desire, you're going to want it this way, and you're going to despise it when it's this way, and you're going to be repulsed by it. And it's through the contact that you're now getting your cravings triggered. If you see something that you agree with, pleasant feelings. If you see something you disagree with, painful feelings. If you hear something you agree with, pleasant feelings. If you hear something you disagree with, painful feelings. If you smell something, if you taste some flavor, if you have physical objects that come in contact with the body, or you have some mental object, some thought or thinking, if it's agreeable to you based on your cravings, pleasant feelings. If it's disagreeable, you'll get the painful feelings. So this is what sensual desire is. The symptoms of this is that you're going to experience discontentedness. If you experience conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant, you have sensual desire. There's craving, desire, attachment in the mind. You're not a bad person. It's just what the mind does, that it has these cravings in the mind. So if you're experiencing any kind of discontentedness, then there's sensual desire in the mind. You can also notice that the mind can take this into extremes. There can be addictions. There can be significant debt, right? When there's addictions, someone might be craving permanently agreeable contact, and now they might be addicted to shopping or jewelry or gambling or alcohol or drugs or intoxicants or things like this. So there can be certain addictions. And then because of those addictions, you're spending a significant amount of money and you can go into debt. Right? Someone might be addicted to sex and now they have all kinds of boyfriends or girlfriends, or maybe they're going to pay for sexual activity and now they go into significant debt because of that. And then because of this pollution of the mind, there can be a lack of focus, a lack of concentration, a lack of memory, a lack of clarity of mind. The mind is muddle-minded. This is what the Buddha describes it. Because when there's this pollution where the mind's longing, yearning, it's almost like you can't even see straight. If you've ever been caught in a craving and you were just headed towards it and you were just longing, yearning for it, you might have been chasing after it. You can't even see straight. You can't even think straight because your mind is just chasing after that particular thing. So you might notice a lack of focus, concentration, memory, or clarity of mind. You might notice that you have exhaustion and tiredness at the end of your day. Because if you get to the end of your day and your central desires were getting met, then you might have seen that as a good day. Wow, this was such a good day. That's because the mind got everything it wanted, or a lot of what it wanted. Its central desires were getting fulfilled. But if you get to the end of the day and you feel tired and exhausted and you haven't gotten what you want that day, your cravings haven't been fulfilled, you'll say, wow, this was a horrible day. Right? You'll feel really tired. You might feel like you have heavy weights on your shoulders, or you might feel like your feet are weighed down with bricks. This is the exhaustion and tiredness because the mind's constantly chasing what it wants throughout the day, and you're not getting what you want. You're not getting what you want. You're not getting what you want. You're not getting what you want, and you can feel utterly exhausted and tired. This is the burden that the mind is carrying around, this central desire. You might notice difficulty sleeping, that you just lay awake at night just kind of ruminating and thinking about all the different things in your mind and all the different things that you want and all the different things that you want to do tomorrow, that the mind has a difficulty of just letting go and getting some good quality sleep. You might notice that there's headaches, because when the mind's chasing after cravings, when it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. But when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets those painful feelings. It gets stressed, and you might notice significant headaches. You might notice that you never feel fully satisfied, that during your day-to-day activities, you just feel like something's missing. There's something that you want, and you just don't have it. You might not feel satisfied. You'll notice hostility, aggression, arguments, broken relationships, and lack of happiness, because the mind's only going to be happy when you get what you want. And when you're not getting what you want, when those central desires aren't getting fulfilled, you're going to experience the lack of happiness. So you might notice this hostility coming up because you might be trying to get a family member to do something you want. And when they do it your way, you'll get happy. But when they don't do it your way, you'll be hostile and bitter and harsh towards them. Or you might notice this aggression coming out towards them, or certain arguments where you're trying to argue with people and adamantly convince them to do things your way. Because the mind in the unenlightened state, with the lack of wisdom of this, it thinks that the way to get to happiness is to get other people to do things my way. This is where your parents might put expectations on you, where they have certain central desires, they want things done a certain way, and they put your expectations on you. Or you might be putting your expectations on other people, right? And because of this, you'll notice broken relationships, that when you're putting your expectations on people and trying to control them to do things your way, they feel pressured and they might choose to leave out of your life because of the bitterness, the hostility, the arguments, but also the expectations of being where your mind is trying to control them. So you might notice these broken relationships and lack of happiness. The solution to this is training the mind with the Eightfold Path. You need to train your mind to let go. Because with craving, desire, attachment, the mind is longing, yearning, and chasing after things, wanting things to be a certain way. So the breathing mindfulness meditation, it isn't to eliminate your thoughts, it's to train the mind to let go. So that in day-to-day life, where you see your mind longing, yearning, and chasing after things, and it's trying to get those pleasant feelings, you can train it to let go. Just let go, right? But the mind's not going to easily do that, particularly with deeply held attachments. because it hasn't been trained to let go. So it's not like you do meditation one day or 1 week or 1 month or even a few months and that you're going to easily be able to let go of these craving and clinging. Your mind has been craving and clinging for countless lifetimes. So you're going to need multiple years of training your mind with breathing mindfulness meditation to train it to let go. And then you practice generosity. Generosity is where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. You live open-handedly, because with craving, desire, attachment, with central desire, where the mind always wants things to be pleasing, you'll become somewhat selfish, where you're holding on to things tightly and wanting things to be a certain way. And now when you're holding on to things, being selfish, the mind can't let go. So when you're using breathing mindfulness meditation to train the mind to let go, and you're using generosity, this trains your mind to live open-handedly, where you're giving and you're sharing without any expectation of anything in return, not even a thank you. This is what's going to help your mind to let go. Then, as you're practicing the wholesome moral conduct through your intention, speech, and actions, including your livelihood, this is purifying your moral conduct based in wise decision-making. Because there are certain cravings that are motivating unwise speech or actions. As I was talking about earlier, when we're lying, that's because the mind's craving something. And if it tells the truth, then it's not going to get what it wants. So if you're interested in getting rid of central desire, not only do you need to train the mind and have mental discipline, but you need to train in moral conduct, because your moral conduct is going to be motivated by your unskillful cravings. By your cravings, it's going to produce unskillful conduct. So you're going to need to not only train your mind, but improve your moral conduct as well. And then there's a meditation to eliminate sexual cravings, because one of the strongest central desires that we tend to have is sexual craving, that we're longing and yearning through all the sense bases in order to get pleasure, right? Sex is like one of the highest central desires that some people tend to have, because all the sense bases are being stimulated. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. And the height of that is where the individual experiences an orgasm, potentially, right? And that's from the stimulation of all these senses. And then conversely, the thing that people really despise is maybe going to the dentist. Some people don't like to go to the dentist because you're sitting there and they're all up in your 6 sense bases. They're up in your eyes and your ears and your nose, your tongue, your mouth, your body, your mind. And sometimes people really reject going to the dentist because they're experiencing all this disagreeable contact from the dentist, right? So this is what the mind's doing, is it's seeing things as agreeable or disagreeable. And one of the strongest sensual desires is sexual contact. So ultimately, to eliminate sensual desire, an individual will need to eliminate sexual contact. When or if you ever choose to do that, it's up to you. But as long as your mind is having sexual contact, you're going to experience some degree of discontentedness. But what some people do is they train their mind all the way up to that second stage of enlightenment, where they're thinning out their sexual contact, particularly if they're a young person. Maybe they're interested in starting a family or just having a relationship with a partner. They might still be having sexual contact. So you can do all the other work on the path to enlightenment and still be maintaining a sexual relationship, but you're going to occasionally feel discontent, because you want sexual activity and you can't get it. And now there's frustration and agitation in the mind. So there's a meditation that helps you to eliminate this. Okay, so this is how you eliminate it. And then with the Eightfold Path, there's additional things that plug into this, which is reflection on death. That there's central desire where the mind is holding on, where you might be holding on to this body, wanting to live in this world permanently, or wanting other people to be permanent in your life. There's an activity, a technique called reflection on death, where you sit and you envision that you've died, or you envision that people around you have died, and this trains your mind to let go, right? And this is something that I teach in various courses and classes and retreats. And then there's something that I teach called identifying your cravings as the red light on the dashboard of your car. Through identifying your cravings, what you do is whenever you get discontent, when you get angry, you get sad, you get frustrated or agitated or any other discontent feeling, you treat that like a red light on the dashboard of your car. If you're driving a car and the red light of the dashboard comes on, you're probably going to pull over and you're going to start looking into the problem. Or you might take your car to a mechanic and ask the mechanic to look at the car. So this discontentedness that's coming up, it's an indicator to you that you've got craving, desire, attachments in the mind. And you'd like to look inward and figure out what those are. And then you're going to need to put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. So let's just say, like, I'll give you an example that I typically give. Like one time I left my house and I realized I left my phone at home and I got fearful. And this fear came up in my mind. The first thing the mind wanted to do was turn around and get the phone. Right? Because I had a craving for this phone to be permanent. And the mind, with its lack of wisdom at that time, thought that the way to solve this problem is go get the phone. But that doesn't actually solve the problem. That just reinforces the craving and keeps it intact. So what I decided to do instead is I decided to go on with my day. And I went on with my day. I was planning to be outside for about an hour and a half, but I extended my time outside. I went to go eat. I went to the movies. I did a whole bunch of stuff. I was outside for like 5 or 6 hours without the phone. I was putting the mind in the situation that it didn't want to be in. It wanted this phone to be permanent, but now I was training it to be outside without this phone, that it was okay. Right? And now when I came home, I didn't just rush to the phone and look at what was on the phone. I just went about my day at home and I went and did other things. I think I sat down and watched TV. I played with my son a little bit and I didn't go to the phone. But then after 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, I went and looked at the phone. I was like, oh, okay, here's the phone. Right? And then I did that some more. I went out again and again and again. And each time my discontentedness diminished more and more and more to the point where there was no fear. There was no uncomfortableness. But then about 2 months later, I accidentally left the phone at home again. And I reached for my pocket. I was like, oh, the phone's gone. Oh, well, there was no discontentedness. And that's how I knew that I eliminated this craving, because previously the same thing happened and the fear came up. But now, having put the mind in that situation and eliminated the craving, I noticed that there was no fear. So there's going to be certain things. Maybe you don't want to be around spiders or snakes or things like this. You're going to need to put the mind in this situation and train your mind that there's nothing to fear here. So when you notice discontentedness coming up, you need to pay attention to it like the red light on the dashboard of your car and look inward and try to figure out what's the craving, what's the desire, what's the mind longing and yearning for. And now you're going to need to develop a plan to put the mind in that situation so that it can now have the opportunity to let go of that craving, desire, attachment. And wherever you see discontentedness coming up, you would like to cut it off and let it go. You're going to need to cut it off and let it go. So there's proactive training, which is what I was sharing over here. The breathing mindfulness meditation, the generosity, improving your moral conduct, the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. This is proactively training your mind to eliminate sensual desire, even the reflection on death. But then in the moment when this discontentedness is arising, you would like to cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. Restrain the mind. Right? And then once you've cut it off and let it go, then you look inward and you try to identify what is the mind craving here. There's some longing, yearning that the mind's having. And when you can identify that, then you can put together a plan to put the mind in that situation so that you can train your mind to be peaceful and joyful in that situation. Because what the mind's going to want to do in the unenlightened state is it's going to want to push this situation away. If you're fearful of spiders, you're going to say, I never want to see spiders ever again. Or if you don't want to be around large crowds, you'll say, I never want to be around large crowds. And you'll try to avoid large crowds. Or if there's a certain food that you don't like I didn't like durian in the past, you're going to want to push that away. And I'm never eating that fruit. And if I even get close to a fruit stand, I'm never going to be interested to smell that particular fruit. Right? This is something that your mind's going to be interested to do. But what you're going to need to do is put the mind in the situation. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust this because I see you guys are getting cold. But what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. So when I realized that I didn't like durian and I was repulsed by durian, I started eating durian. But I didn't just go right to the fruit because that consistency in the mouth, it was too much for me. The smell was too much. So I like cake. right? So I started getting durian cakes. I got these little snack cakes that had durian in it, and I started eating that. And now my mind started associating this smell in the durian fruit with something that was enjoyable, right? And I did that for a period of time. And then I ended up eating durian fruit. I ate it. It was like, it's fine. But it took me a period of time of eating this durian cake, right? It kind of slowly, gradually trained my mind in the direction that it needed to be trained in, which is to see this durian fruit as something that sustains the health of the body. It's not something to please the tongue. Because with sensual desire, you will look at food as this is something to please the mind and please the tongue. But that's not the goal of food. The goal of food is to nourish the body. So if you have a craving in your mind and you're trying to please the tongue and please the body, you'll just go towards foods that you particularly care for. And these foods that you don't care for, you'll avoid them like the plague. But what you would like to do to get rid of this sensual desire is put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, which is eat that durian fruit. You're going to need to eat those things that you right now you don't particularly care for. And then you gradually train your mind to be comfortable with eating those things. Okay, so this is how you eliminate sensual desire. This is how you'll know that sensual desire has been eliminated, that you'll no longer have the arising of conditioned feelings for a minimum of 1 year. When you notice that there is no anger, there is no frustration, there is no agitation or annoyance, there's no guilt or shame or fear or stress or anxiety or loneliness or boredom, all these kinds of things. It's going to take you multiple years to get to this point, right? Before it's 1 year that you don't have any discontentedness whatsoever. So when you're not experiencing those conditioned feelings, that's how you'll know that the mind's been trained. Now you'll be experiencing unconditioned mental qualities more and more, where you're just always happy. Because with sensual desire in your mind, if you eat food that you like, you're happy. If you don't eat food if you eat food that you don't like, you're unhappy, you're frustrated. But when you get rid of sensual desire, no matter what food you eat, you can maintain your joy. You can maintain your peacefulness. Right? With sensual desire, if you're at home alone, you might be happy. But if you're out in a large crowd, you might be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. If you have sensual desire and your mom says something very loving and very kind to you, you'll be happy. But if she says something degrading or disparaging, you'll be frustrated, you'll be agitated. But when you get rid of your sensual desire, you're no longer craving for things to be a certain way. When that person pulls up next to you with the music that's hip hop that you like, all right, we're dancing, let's go. All right, that's wonderful. But now somebody pulls up to you with that other music that you don't particularly care for. Hey, they're enjoying it. Wonderful. Good for them. Right? For you, it's like, hey, I don't really listen to that kind of music, but hey, I'm not going to get angry because of it, right? Let's have a good time. They're having fun. No reason to get angry or frustrated just because they like that music and I don't. This is just impermanence. But when you have sensual desire in your mind, you won't be able to do that. So for 1 year, you'll notice that all the different experiences that you're in, you can maintain your joy. You're just always happy. That's how you'll know sensual desire is gone. You'll no longer have sexual contact or be even interested in sexual contact for a minimum of 1 year. This is something that people, depending on where you are in your life, that might not be what you're ready to do. But eventually you'll get to the point where this peace and joy is coming through more and more, and you'll start appreciating that more than this temporary experience. Because if you notice with sexual activity, when you have sexual activity, you'll feel great for a couple of days, maybe a couple of hours, maybe a couple of minutes, I don't know, depending on who you're having sex with, right? Maybe not at all, right? But nonetheless, you're going to experience some amount of time where you're feeling great after that sexual activity. But then your mind's going to end up back in the painful feelings because of its cravings. And now it's not experiencing that pleasure of the sexual activity any longer. You'll notice that there's no foods that you dislike by the time you eliminate sensual desire. You can eat anything and everything by the time you eliminate sensual desire. Okay. You'll notice that there aren't any addictions. You're not addicted to anything at all, no matter what it is. You might do certain things regularly, like you might read books, but you're not addicted to it. You might watch YouTube, but you're not addicted to it. You can pick it up and you can put it right back down. No big deal. But you're not addicted to these things. You'll notice that it's easy to fall asleep and that you'll have good quality sleep every single time that you sleep. You'll have good quality sleep every single time. You'll notice that the mind will have a high degree of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity because you don't have the longing, yearning, the mind pulling towards certain things. You'll notice that you have a high degree and a long duration of calmness, satisfaction, fulfillment, and joy, this unconditioned happiness. Where in the past there was discontentedness, now you don't have that. So eliminating sensual desire eliminates a significant amount of discontentedness, but you can still have discontentedness related to those higher fetters. Remember, there's desire for form, desire for formless, conceit, restlessness, and then there's ignorance. So this eliminating sensual desire gets rid of a significant portion of all your discontentedness, but your mind is not yet enlightened here. So you will still experience some minor discontentedness, but you won't have any discontentedness related to sensual desire. Okay? Any questions on sensual desire or how to eliminate it or how to know that you've actually eliminated it? Okay, Helena, you have a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. So I noticed that some places that are dirty, cluttered, like full of trash, or some really low quality, smelly hostels, those are all places that I have a strong aversion towards, and I put myself intentionally sometimes in those places. The mind is grossed out, but I just keep trying from time to time. But I noticed that those places sometimes attract unwholesome people or unwholesome situations. So how to navigate this process of putting your mind in situations it doesn't want to be in, but at the same time avoiding unwholesomeness.
So when you're in those environments, have you experienced any unwholesome results coming back to you?
Yes, for example, in Laos, I spent a night in like a really terrible hostel with no windows. It was really smelly. And the guests that were there, it didn't really feel safe.
Okay, so I don't suggest that you go to that level where you're staying at a place like that. Instead, you would like to be able to control this so that you stay in a safe place. That's wise to sleep in a safe place. But now maybe you go to an area where there's like a trash dump, right? One of the things I did for this is there was this wastewater treatment facility near where I used to live in America. And the smell was horrible. Even you got within, half a mile of that place, you could smell it through your car. So I actually drove to this place and I got out of my car and I sit there and breathed it in for several minutes. And it was on this highway, right? So you got to find places like that where you're not putting yourself in a situation where you're living in it and you're living around unwholesomeness. So you would like to be able to turn it on and turn it off. And this is the beauty of training your mind this way, is you get to decide, now's the time I would like to go confront this. Let me go do it. Let me experience it. And now let me get away from that. And now you're training your mind through that. But in terms of living in an environment like that, even for a day or two, I don't recommend that you do that kind of thing, because you would like to be able to turn this on and turn it off and throttle it as you're training your mind.
Got it, David. Perfectly clear. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Anything else you guys would like to ask about sensual desire? Yep, Steve.
So the reference is to 1 year
Yes.
on the previous slide. So if you can achieve that 1 year for those various areas, then the expectation is you've sort of beaten it. You're on top of it. You will stay on top of it. Is that right?
Well, if you go 1 year without experiencing discontentedness related to sensual desire, for all intents and purposes, it's gone. It's not going to rise itself back up again, because you've completely eliminated it from the mind. In 1 year, you're going to experience enough impermanence that you'll know that it's gone, because you won't experience any discontentedness. So you're going to experience enough of the impermanent nature of the world that you will have had the opportunity for anything to get triggered, that if you had a craving in your mind, it would get triggered. So essentially what you're doing is you're building up your practice to a certain point in time, and now you're living your life that way for an extended period of time, shedding all this sensual desire. But then after several years of that, you're going to eventually see that you're getting these longer and longer periods of no discontentedness. Because you can go 3 to 6 months sometimes where there's no discontentedness whatsoever. and then boom, you're going to experience a little bit of discontentedness. It's not intense, it's not significant, but you're going to get some discontentedness. But if you go an entire year without discontentedness, you'll know that the central desire is gone.
Yes, the discontentedness is almost an outcome of your practice of not experiencing. But then if you come to like no sexual contact for a year, that's almost like setting a goal. Like, you've come to a conclusion that hypothetically, you're at the time in life where you're going to do that. So in the early stages, you're almost setting that as a goal. And, probably in the early stages, with a degree of determination through meditation and practice and the like.
Yeah, the meditation and the generosity and all these other things are gradually taking the craving, desire, attachment, the central desire out of the mind. But you'll notice that it'll rise up every once in a while. It's just like a candle. When a candle's going out, it can kind of flicker for a while. And you can even think that it's out, and then boom, it'll kind of flare back up again sometimes, if you've ever seen a candle do that. These cravings are the same way. Like, they can kind of go dormant a little bit. I've seen them go dormant as long as 6 months, and then they kind of flare back up again. So that's why the 1 year is such an important thing. So let's just use sexual contact as an example. Like, if you're noticing that your sexual contact is becoming more and more distant, or maybe at younger time in our life, we might have been having sex every day or every 2 or 3 days or something like this, where now maybe it's getting spaced out a little bit more. Maybe it's like once a month or once every 2 months or once or 3 months, and that keeps getting spaced out more and more and more. You can even get to the point where it's like once a year, and this is that craving going out. It's like a light going out. It's like a candle going out. But eventually you're going to get to a point where you don't have the urge, you don't have the desire to, you don't have the longing and yearning for sexual contact, because you've seen enough of the problems with it that whenever you have it and indulge in it, yeah, you feel great for a few hours, a few days, but then your mind drops right back off. And this peacefulness that you experience for 3 months or 6 months, that's more important to you than this temporary pleasure that you're experiencing. So you'll notice that you'll go about a year without any sexual contact, and your mind's becoming more and more peaceful. So the way that you eliminate these central desires is you first distance yourself from the object, and then you train your mind to eliminate the craving. And this is why, like, if you've been out of a relationship for maybe a year or 2 or 3, you might have distanced yourself from sexual activity, but you still had the craving in there. You still had the longing and yearning. And it was only a matter of time before you got back with another partner, and then you were right back having sex again, right? And then that's where usually the arguments start in your relationship, because the expectations come in once they're starting to have sex. So you got to first distance yourself from an object, and then you need to train your mind to eliminate it. So that's what I did with the phone, right? The example I gave on the phone, I had to distance myself from it, and I had to train my mind to let it go. And you'll need to do that with all your central desires, like sex and these other things. But then there's things like food, where you need to actually put the mind in that situation by eating the food, right? Because a desire like sex, a central desire, you actually can't do it without craving, desire, attachment. It's not possible to do it. So if there's something you're repulsed by, you're going to need to bring that in and actually experience that durian fruit. If there's something that you're longing and yearning for and that you're craving, that you're holding on to, maybe like a piece of chocolate cake, you're going to need to distance yourself from that and now train your mind to let that go. So it depends on if you're craving something, you're going to need to distance yourself and let it go. If you're repulsed by something and you're pushing something away, you're going to need to bring that in and actually experience it. If it's a wholesome thing and it's not leading to unwholesome results. If you have no interest in having cocaine, for example, you don't need to go out and get cocaine and bring that into your life. But something like, I don't know, like durian fruit or something else, you're going to need to experience those things, because it's just a fruit. It's just a food. Even if you have no interest, you would like to just test the mind and see, is it having craving, desire, attachment in this situation? So this is why the monks walk down the street and they just accept whatever food's given to them, because now their mind's not getting to have the choice of what am I going to eat today, right? So the monks walking down the street, they're just accepting whatever food's given to them, and their mind's training to not have central desire. You can accomplish the same thing in a household life by, some people go on meal plans where you don't participate in the creation of the menu. You just get food delivered to you. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is if you eat at restaurants, you can go into a restaurant and you look at the food server and you say, what do you suggest I eat here? And they're like, oh, I suggest number 5. Okay, I'll take that. Even if it's something you'll never eat, you've never eaten, maybe eggplant, and you don't eat eggplant, just say okay. Or another option is like you sit down with somebody and somebody else is ordering, you can say, I'll take the same thing that they take, right? Like someone orders something, I'll have the same thing that they take. And that way your mind isn't getting the option to make a decision about your food. So that's what the monks are doing when they're walking down the street and accepting food. And you can create the same experience from the household life. You can benefit from that by not allowing your mind to choose what you're going to eat on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And you might do that 80% of the time, 90% of the time, and that's helpful to let go of the central desire. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately, you'll get to a point where you'll just start selecting your food again. But you're going to need to go an extended period of time doing that kind of thing to make sure the mind doesn't have any central desire. Because you won't necessarily see the foods that you don't like because your mind is just choosing to not order those things. You're looking at the menu, what do I want today? And you're picking that chocolate cake, right? So you could also, I guess, just, spin the menu and stick your finger down. You could do that too, right? That's a random selection. All right. So now I'm going to move into ill will, because when your mind has central desire, if it gets what it wants, it gets the pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get the painful feelings. And part of those painful things is the ill will arise, the anger, the hostility, the hatred, the aggression, the resentment, the frustration, the irritation, and the annoyance. The reason why ill will is arising is because of its central desire. This is why we talk about these two fetters at the same time, because when central desire is in the mind, your ill will is going to arise when you don't get what you want. You can look at your life and you can see that. When your mom does what you want, you're happy. But when she doesn't do what you want, you get angry or frustrated at her. And you might become unskillful in your intention, speech, or actions. Your life partner, your children, your boss, your coworkers, when they don't do what you want, when your expectations aren't getting fulfilled, this is where your anger, your ill will arises. So the painful feelings are all coming from this central desire. So that's why it's important to get rid of central desire. The more you work on your central desire, you will naturally have less and less ill will in the mind. And the more ill will that you have, it's producing this unskillful conduct, and you're damaging your relationships. And there's certain strains and struggles and difficulties in life because of this. So that's why it's so important in the path to enlightenment to eliminate cravings, desires, attachments, because then you can become more and more skillful in the way that you conduct yourself. So the symptoms of your ill will is all these painful feelings. You're going to notice these painful feelings arising in the mind. You'll notice the hostility, the aggression, the bitterness, the arguments. If you're arguing in relationships, this is because of your central desire. You want this person to think a certain way, or you want them to do a certain thing. And when they do things your way, you get happy. And when they don't, you're going to argue with them and try to convince them to do things your way. And this is where you might experience broken relationships. And because of this ill will, that's where the lack of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind. If you can think about times where you've been so angry and so frustrated, you couldn't even think straight during that period of time. But not only is it during those periods of time, but that pollution of mind of the ill will is in there. It's not triggered right now, but it's still in there, and it's hindering you from having focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. Again, you'll experience exhaustion, tiredness, difficulty sleeping, headaches. You can even notice chest pains and other health issues. Oftentimes when you have stress and anxiety, you go to the doctor. I think I've seen a statistic that 90% of all office visits to a primary care doctor is stress related. Right? You might be going there because something hurts in the body, but it's actually coming from the mind, because the mind is the boss and the body is the employee. The body is just following along with whatever is in the mind. So if the mind has anger, hatred, and ill will, then the body is going to experience certain aches and pains because of this. So it's going to put strain on the body, including a shorter lifespan. If you look at people who tend to be really angry and bitter and harsh and hostile, they have a shorter lifespan because it puts a lot of stress on the organs of the body. So when you're purifying your mind, you're becoming more joyful, you're going to see that you have a longer and longer life because your body isn't being, affected in the same way with this anger and hostility. With ill will in your mind, not only will you have ill will towards others, but you might notice this inner dialogue within your own mind where you're degrading and diminishing yourself, where you think negatively of yourself. You might notice this, that you're having ill will towards this being who you are, not just others, but you're having ill will towards yourself as well. You'll notice that you have aversion towards certain people and certain situations, because when that craving is in there, when that central desire is in there, and you're not getting what you want, you'll get painful feelings. You'll get the anger, the frustration, the agitation. And because of the mind's lack of wisdom, not realizing where it's coming from, you'll associate these painful feelings with somebody or something external. And what aversion is where you're pushing this person away or you're pushing the situation away. The mind thinks that the way to solve this anger that you have is to push this person away or push this situation away. But it doesn't solve the problem because you just get angry about something else. It's only a matter of time. This is how you know that this isn't actually the real cause of the problem, that it's not your mom or your dad or your brothers or your sisters or your boss that's causing you to be angry. It's not your best friend. So when you push those people out of your life in the past, you still get agitated. You still get annoyed because they aren't the actual cause of your problem. So when you have ill will in the mind, you feel uncomfortable. You feel painful feelings, and the mind's trying to get to something that it feels is comfortable. So it tries to push people or push the situation away, but it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't eliminate your sensual desire, and it doesn't eliminate the ill will. So you might notice because of this ill will that you have aversion, where you're pushing people away. The solution to all of this is to practice the Eightfold Path, which includes loving kindness. Loving kindness meditation is the exact opposite. It's rewiring your mind. It's training your mind to be loving and kind. This is where you're sitting in meditation. You're doing affirmations in the mind. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. And you include other people who you have anger, who you have hatred towards. So if you have anger towards your mom, or you have anger towards your dad or your brothers and sisters, you include them in your meditation, not because you're trying to change them, because you can't change other people through your meditation. You're changing your mind. You're rewiring your mind to become more loving and kind and peaceful. So that when you transform your mind with the meditation, it's like filling up your gas tank. And now you go out into the world and you're loving and kind in your relationships. So I had a lot of resentment from my mom when I was growing up based on things that happened in my childhood. So when I started doing this loving kindness meditation and I transformed my mind, now when I was around mom, I could be more loving and kind, and it transformed our relationship. Where in the past I would be bitter and harsh and hostile to her. Now, having done the meditation, I could be loving and kind with her. I could be gentle with her in ways that I wasn't before. Where I was putting out bitterness and hostility, that's what was coming back to me. So when I transformed my mind, I was able to be more loving and more kind in these relationships through my intentions, my speech, my actions, and my livelihood. And then you would like to restrain your mind. Wherever you see this ill will arising, maybe you go to the airport, you go up to the front, to the ticket office, and maybe they're dealing with your ticket and you don't get what you want. And maybe you want to be sarcastic to this ticket agent. Maybe you want to say something, off color or backhanded to this person. And you see it's on the tip of your tongue and you're getting ready to say this thing to this person. You need to restrain your mind. You need to pull it back. Right? Or maybe you're at a restaurant and someone brings you food that you didn't order, or maybe your food is cold, right? And maybe you eat it and you associate that anger that's starting to arise with the server. Restrain your mind. Realize that your anger is coming from your own central desire. It doesn't make sense to be bitter and harsh and hostile to that food server because it's not going to solve the problem. If you like your food, heat it up. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, ma'am. Would you mind heating this up for me? Right? That's how you deal with that. Because every time food's delivered to you, it's not going to be hot. right? This is impermanence. So wherever you see your mind having this anger, this hostility, this bitterness, this resentment, you need to understand that if you put that out through your intention, speech, and actions, it's just going to damage your relationships. So you need to restrain the mind. You need to pull the mind back. And that's what's going to help you to transform the mind. The way that you'll know that this is eliminated from the mind is that you won't notice any arising of any anger, frustration, irritation, agitation, annoyance, or dislike. Right now, there's probably certain people that you dislike in your life. There's certain people you like, certain people that you dislike. Your dislike isn't coming from the other person. The reason why your mind dislikes that person is because of your sensual desire in your ill will, that you have an expectation for that person to be a certain way. You want that person to be a certain way. That's the mind craving permanence. But you need to realize you live in an impermanent world, that people function in different ways. And you can get to the point where you eliminate this ill will and this hostility towards this person, even dislike, where you don't even have the slightest dislike. It's physically impossible for someone who's eliminated ill will to experience any of these feelings. That when you've gone a minimum of 1 year where you haven't been angry, you haven't had hatred or ill will or frustration or agitation or annoyance, or even the slightest dislike towards another person, you'll know that your ill will's been eliminated. If you have anger or resentment in your mind from something that's happened in the past, you're only harming your own mind. Sometimes we have a boyfriend or girlfriend and we feel jaded, and now you're holding on to your anger and you feel like that's the way to get back at that person. But it actually isn't causing them any harm. It's causing you harm. It's kind of like holding on to a hot coal and you're trying to burn this other person, but the only person getting burned is yourself. So what the loving kindness meditation and these other techniques are doing for you is training your mind to let go. Right? So when you're eliminating your sensual desire, it's also eliminating your ill will. But you need to actively go in and eliminate the ill will. You're going to notice that when ill will is gone, this focus, concentration, memory, clarity of mind starts to arise. You'll notice that you'll be able to speak gently to everyone and anyone in your life. Right now, you probably find that very difficult because of your sensual desire and because of your ill will. Maybe certain people in your life, like your parents or your siblings or other people like this, you might find it very challenging to speak gentle in these situations. But by the time you get rid of your sensual desire and your ill will, you'll be able to be gentle with everybody. Because remember, by this point, you've already eliminated wrong behavior, which is that third fetter as well. You're starting to speak gentle to everybody around you. You'll notice that smiling becomes easy for you. When you have ill will, you're kind of grumpy, you're kind of irritated, like your facial expressions will show you what's going on in your mind, right? If you're grumpy and you're irritable, you're having this ill will in your mind, you're not going to be able to smile very easily. But when you gotten rid of ill will, you'll be able to smile very easily. It'll come very natural to you. By the time you get rid of ill will, you'll notice that you won't be bitter, harsh, and hostile to others. So therefore, people aren't going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile to you. Right? If you're putting out bitterness and harshness and hostility, that's what's going to come back to you. You'll get to the point where 99.9% of everyone you interact with is just nothing but love and kindness, and people treat you very, very well. Right now, that might not be the case. You might be in certain situations where people are bitter and harsh and hostile to you. And that's because that's what you're putting out. But when you live an extended period of time where you're being loving and kind, eventually more and more people will be loving and kind to you. But as long as you're putting out bitterness and hostility, you're going to need to experience that coming back to you. So you will no longer be interested to argue with anyone, and people won't argue with you. Right now, people probably argue with you, right? And you argue with them. But when you stop arguing with people, people will stop arguing with you. As long as you keep arguing with mom and dad and brothers and sisters, they're going to keep arguing with you. But when you transform your mind and you can restrain your mind and you have discipline of your mind, when they start arguing, you might choose to walk away. And now more and more they learn every time they try to argue with you, you walk away. They might get angry, but that's their central desire. They want you to be in that conversation. They're holding on to you. But if you keep walking away more and more and more, they're going to slowly learn, if I'm interested in talking to this person, I'm going to need to be calm. right? There's no reason to sit there and talk to somebody who's angry and bitter and harsh and hostile. It's not the proper time to talk. So if you get used to disciplining your mind and training your mind, you can walk away from these situations more and more. People won't argue with you, but you're going to need to do that for an extended period of time. And you're going to need to realize that whenever they're getting angry, that you're walking away, they're causing their own anger. It's not you. Their mind is holding on, wanting you to be permanent, and they're wanting to argue with you. But as long as you keep that going, it's like kicking up the dust, and the dust just keeps going. And you're not interested in doing that, because if you do, you're going to just continue to argue. You're going to notice that your personal and professional relationships can be conducted with ease. They're going to really blossom, that you're going to start being so easy to interact with other people. And you're going to notice that making friends, new friends, it's effortless. You can talk to anybody anytime because you don't have this central desire of wanting people to be a certain way, and you don't have this ill will where you're bitter and harsh and hostile towards people. And this is how you'll know that your ill will is completely gone. Okay, so I think you guys might have some questions. Looks like Claire, you have some questions?
So walk me through how to transform my mind about walking on the sidewalk. My general mode of driving a car or walking in a crowd is I'm always very alert. And so if I see someone coming, I make room for them. Mm-hmm. I'll even stop. I'll walk off the path. And since I've been in Chiang Mai, I really notice that almost no matter how hard I try to accommodate everyone else, people seem to kind of be making a beeline for me and bump into me or walk straight in front of me and stop, or all these crazy things are happening. And I'm trying to find like a new extension of my peaceful way of interacting in a crowd to accommodate all of this. Mm-hmm. Can you help me?
Yeah. All you just described was a bunch of impermanence. That's all that is. If your mind's wanting it to be a certain way, when it's not happening that way, you'll be agitated or frustrated or annoyed or you'll just maybe dislike what's going on. So this path isn't about getting other people to do certain things a certain way for you, but it's about when you're in that situation, don't crave it to be any different. If you're walking down the sidewalk and someone walks right up to you and stops, okay, you just step to the side, or they step to the side, and you just keep on walking. Or, you're not going to have this clear run, right? I don't know what country you're from. Maybe America or USA, right? Big sidewalks, not very many people using them. People don't really walk around much. People use cars a lot. You can get on a sidewalk and you can just walk straight, right? No problem. There's nobody around. And that's what your mind's gotten used to. And that might be what you're expecting. That might be what you're craving. But now when you're in a tighter city where the sidewalk is smaller and they have poles and boxes and all these different things, and not everybody can fit on the sidewalk, maybe your mind's wanting that and craving that. And now you're in a different situation. It's experiencing this impermanence. So you're going to need to sometimes step off the sidewalk or stop and let somebody walk around you, or sometimes someone's going to bump into you. You're going to experience these things. And sometimes you might even need to walk in the street because there's no room on the sidewalk. And this is just an impermanence. And you're just going to need to get comfortable with that. So the more that you do it, the better. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just keep doing it and slowly but surely let go. Your craving, desire, attachment has to let go of wanting it to be different than it is. Mm-hmm. Okay, anybody online? You guys have questions? Okay, Helena, you have a question? Go ahead, ma'am. We can't hear you yet, Helena. I see your mic's unmuted, though. Are you still there? See, we got some impermanence here, too. Not every student's going to be able to talk through their mic, right? Sometimes the internet's not going to work. Okay, we're not getting you, Helena. I see your mic's unmuted, though. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So do I have a question? Oh, okay. Leela, go ahead. Helena, if you'd like to put your question in the comment section, you can do that too. Yes, ma'am.
Now that I've started to notice when I'm discontented and realize what's causing it, I can usually kind of hack certain situations when I see those feelings come up and be like, oh, I'm craving this and that's why I'm feeling this way. And sometimes I can figure out how to create the scenario for myself to get rid of the discontentedness. Driving is a huge one for me because I crave other people to be mindful of me and others, and I crave for efficiency. So when someone is snail mail speed making a left-hand turn and I'm behind them in the rain, I would like for them to be mindful that there's people behind them and go a little faster. And instead of going around them, I will make myself stay behind them to try to get rid of this discontented feeling of get out of my way and get rid of that frustration. But there's other scenarios that I'm finding myself in where I don't really know how to have a hack for that. So the other craving I have is for things to make sense. And when I'm confronted with something that doesn't make sense to me, I get really discontented and frustrated. And then it will click later usually. And then I'm like, like there was no point in even having that middle ground where I felt all of this discontentedness. I could have just skipped that part and gotten to the understanding. But I get really muddled and I'm not clear with my words. I'm all messed up in here and I don't really know how to hack that.
Okay. So it's important to understand each of these fetters, it's causing pollution in the mind, and the mind's going to be congested or confused, have this misunderstanding. This is the 10th fetter, is the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. So from where you are now until you get to enlightenment, you're going to have plenty of misunderstandings along the way. And you got to just realize that that's what's occurring, particularly when you're talking with a teacher. Like the teacher understands it very clear. They understand how to explain it to you, but the student's mind just might not be understanding it. And now what you would like to do is just always recognize that you're working from a position of, I don't understand. And because of that, you're going to need to ask and get really good at asking questions and taking your time, listening to what's being shared, and then thinking about that, and realize that at the end of every conversation, you're not going to understand fully. That in these teachings, you're going to have a conversation, you're not going to understand fully, and you're going to need to step away, and you're going to need to think about what was talked about, and you're still not going to understand. And then you're going to need to talk some more, and then you talk some more, ask some more questions, and you still don't understand. And you're going to need to step away and reflect on that and think about it, and then you're going to need to come back and ask some more questions. And you're going to have this repetitive process where you're needing to regularly ask questions and step away and reflect on what was shared. And each time it's taking you to a better and better understanding, but it might be, 6, 8, 10, 12 different conversations before, I got it. Now I understand. And that's where you need to have that dedication and diligence and have the confidence in the teachings of the Buddha, and just keep asking the questions and keep having the conversations, and don't have a craving that by the end of this conversation, I will understand, because you're not going to get that every conversation. So you got to let go of that craving, and be nice to yourself. That it's a journey. It's going to take some time. Okay. Oh, Helena's given us our question here. So an enlightened being, let me take this off. So an enlightened being who eliminated sensual desire would feel exactly the same way sitting on a cozy sofa and doing skydiving. Thank you. They would have this skydiving. So they would feel exactly the same way. So their mind would be peaceful and calm and content. Like we were talking yesterday, they're not going to have that adrenaline rush just because they're going skydiving. It's just an experience. And while you can notice that sitting on the sofa, there's a certain amount of comfort there, or sitting on a hard bench, the body is experiencing something different. And an enlightened being can notice that there's a difference between this soft plush couch and this hard bench, but the mind is experiencing the same thing. While the body is aware that on this soft plush couch, that's one thing, this hard bench is another thing, and this is just impermanence. And the enlightened mind doesn't crave it to be one particular way permanently. But in the unenlightened state, you'll have a craving for that comfort and wanting that to be permanent. And now when you're sitting on the hard bench, the mind will be discontent. It'll be frustrated and agitated. So that's why I say the key to all of this is understanding that the conditional pleasant feelings are just as much of a problem. So when you're sitting on that soft plush couch, you're not interested in getting all these happy, excited feelings like, wow, this couch is so plush and so wonderful, because now when you're sitting on that hard bench, you'll be frustrated and agitated because you don't have the plush sofa. So you need to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much of a problem as the painful ones. And it's the conditioned pleasant feelings, that it's only based on this condition that the mind can be happy. So you need to be able to see this. And now, yes, no matter what you're doing as an enlightened being, your mind's going to be peaceful and joyful. And remember, it's not that you're mute, it's not that you're numb, it's just that the mind is just always experiencing joy and happiness by the time you get to enlightenment, because you don't have a craving for it to be different or to be otherwise. And when you're experiencing something maybe like skydiving, you understand that it's impermanent, and you're not going to allow your mind to get conditioned pleasant feelings, because then when you're not doing that, you would feel sad or frustrated or agitated. So your mind's just always going to be experiencing the peace and joy and enjoyment and happiness all the time as an unconditioned mental quality rather than a conditioned feeling. Because conditioned feelings arise, they change, and they fade away, where unconditioned mental qualities are just always there. They're always persistent. Looks like you have a question.
How does an enlightened person then choose when there's options? So, for example, you have to choose between the comfortable couch or the hard bench. How do you choose them?
So all the choices that you make as an enlightened being is going to be based on wise decision making, where in the unenlightened state, you'll make choices based on your sensual desire or maybe even your ill will. Like if you're craving and longing and yearning, you will make decisions based in cravings, based in your desires, your own selfish desires. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you've eliminated these cravings and you'll make wise decisions. So if you have the soft couch or the hard bench, obviously most people are going to select the soft couch, right? But while you do that, you're not clinging to it, you're not holding on to it, you know that it's not permanent, and you're not taking pleasure in it. You just realize like, wow, this sofa feels really nice and this feels great to sit here. But you realize that it's impermanent, that you're not going to be able to permanently sit in that situation. So you'll make wise choices about your life, but you're not going to base them in cravings and longing and yearning, because whenever you're making decisions through cravings, desires, attachments, it's going to lead to unwholesome results, because the mind is just trying to please itself and have this central desire. So by the time you get to enlightenment, while you're not having longing and yearning anymore, you will have preferences. Like you might prefer to sit on the soft sofa, but you'll be completely content sitting on the bench too. That if somebody comes in and maybe there's an elderly person and you're like, hey, you can sit here. And then you maybe offer that, right? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's up to you. The Buddha is not going to tell you exactly what to do in any given situation. But no matter what you're doing, you're going to be able to maintain your peacefulness and your joy as an enlightened being, because you don't crave it to be any other way. That you just understand that what you're experiencing is an impermanent thing, and you're not going to get conditioned pleasant feelings, and you're not going to get conditioned painful feelings. Okay, let me just check YouTube and Facebook. So I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So
David, I just
you have something? Sure, Steve.
So just a little bit along the lines of your example with the durian, in terms of ill will. There might be certain situations or certain people that regularly trigger you. I'm going to go to that meeting and I know that guy's going to be there, and So I'm assuming that there can be benefit in rather than avoiding that situation, but actually putting yourself in that situation and monitor yourself, and obviously avoid the situation where it gets to a stage of a blow up, but putting yourself in situations which you might normally want to avoid because it triggers ill will.
Yeah, and this is where you take over. I don't always use the word control, but you take over control over your mind and your life, where let's just say there's a certain meeting where there's a person that you don't like. And normally you go there, you get frustrated, you get agitated, you get annoyed, maybe you talk to this person aggressively, and now you have got all kinds of problems. Where now, when you learn this and you realize, no, the problem isn't with him, the problem is within my own mind, and I need to eliminate this. So you know what? I'm going to go to that meeting in 3 days. So for the next 3 days, let me do some loving kindness meditation and include this person so I can be more loving and kind. And now when I go to this meeting, if I notice any frustration coming up, maybe I choose to leave. And that's the best way to deal with that. So you kind of throttle it. You kind of put your mind in that situation. But if you're noticing that the frustration is building and you're about to become unskillful and you can't cut it off, don't allow the mind to become unskillful, because as soon as you put out your bitterness and harshness, that's just going to come back to you. So if you're noticing that that's coming up and you're having difficulties training your mind, restraining your mind, the best option might be to just walk away. And now you spend some more time doing loving kindness meditation, train your mind a bit more, eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments. And now you put the mind in that situation again. And now you try to stay there a little bit longer. And now you stay there a little bit longer, and you're not wanting this person to be a certain way. So slowly but surely you wear away this anger, hatred, and ill will. The Buddha gives a great analogy on the wearing away of these pollutions. He talks, and I think you've heard this before with the digging tool, that there's this wooden handle and you're digging with this wooden handle, and each day you're wearing away the wood on this wooden handle, but you're not going to know how much wood you're wearing away of this wooden handle each day. But when it gets to the point where this wooden handle is exhausted and you need to replace it, you're going to know that. But each day when you're digging with this wooden handle, you don't know how much wood you're wearing away, but it is getting worn away. You just don't know how much. But when it's time to replace this handle, you'll know that because it's exhausted. It's the same thing with this ill will. Each day when you're doing loving kindness meditation and you're going out into the world and training your mind like this, the way we're talking about, you're not going to know how much ill will you're eliminating each day. You're not going to know. But when it's completely gone, you're going to know that, because you're not angry and bitter and harsh anymore. So when I was training my mind with my mom, I didn't know each day how much I was wearing away. But when it had been 6 months, a year, 2 years, I haven't been bitter and harsh and hostile with my mom, I knew it was all gone. It had completely exhausted because it was gone. But each day I needed that confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, you're going to need it in your teacher, in your own ability to get to enlightenment. That's what you're going to need. So that's why getting rid of doubt is so important, to be able to get rid of sensual desire and ill will, because you're going to have to slowly wear this away. And if you have doubt, you're not going to be dedicated and diligent to gradually wearing away the sensual desire and the ill will. So it's going to take you some time. It's going to be a multiple year journey to enlightenment. And this is where you can see enlightenment isn't instantaneous, right? Sometimes people think enlightenment is instantaneous, but you can see you got to gradually wear this away and gradually train the mind and gradually progress to this enlightened mental state. Yep. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just share with you guys what I'm going to teach you tomorrow, since we're not going to do an evening session this evening like we had been. Tomorrow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with loving kindness meditation. Now that I've taught you that loving kindness meditation is important and you need it to eliminate ill will, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I'm going to teach you loving kindness meditation. After that, I'm going to teach you about the pollution of desire for form and formless. This is going to help you eradicate the craving for existence and the fear of death. And then after I teach you that, I'm going to teach you about this fetter of conceit, helping you understand how to develop humbleness and eliminating the ego and dissolving the ego. And then in our evening session tomorrow, our activity tomorrow, if you guys would like to go, would be to go to Hua Tung Tao. But if it's raining like this, we're probably not going to be able to go. But that's the activity that we have planned. But in the evening, we're going to do loving kindness meditation together. And then I'll teach you about how to eliminate this pollution of restlessness. The restlessness is like anxiety in the mind. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate this from the mind as well. So that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. So we're going to just end class here at, it's not even 12:30 yet. So this is good. You guys will have the whole rest of the day for yourself. How many of you guys are going on the excursion to the orphanage? Can I see a show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So the van's going to be here at 1:30, and I planned it this way so that you guys can go out and get some food for yourself to eat lunch, because you're going to need to eat lunch. And then at 1:30, the van will be here and you guys can head out. He'll probably get here a little bit early. He's going to take you guys to Macro, which is a large store where you guys can buy a bunch of stuff. And then he's going to take you to the orphanage. They're kind of thinking that you guys will be there around 4 to 4:30. That's what I told them. The kids are going to be coming over from school, and you guys will be able to interact with the children at that point. And then you can actually spend whatever time you'd like, because we're not having an evening class. And then the van will bring you back here. I asked the van to bring you guys back here no later than 6:30. So that's what he's planning. So you guys got plenty of time to be able to make your way back here, because the orphanage is about an hour away. So if you spend about an hour and a half at the orphanage, you have plenty of time to get back here by 6:30. If you guys would like to put a bunch of money in, I'm going to contribute some money too, even though I'm not going to be going. I've got a little bowl here. If you guys would like to put some money into that, that'll be able to see what money you guys have to purchase things at the Macro. And I'll give you guys a list of things. Originally, I was going to go with you to Macro, but I think I can just give you a list of the things that I buy, and you guys can purchase those things at Macro, load them up in the van, and then take them over to the orphanage, because they like to have food. That's what they really need. I've never asked them what they need before, except for the very first time when I went. I asked them, what do you need? And they gave me a list of food products, and I've just always taken them those things. But for this trip, I said, is there anything special that you need? And his reply was food. That's what they need, right? They've got 15 to 20 people there. They just need food. That's what they need. So if you guys would like to purchase them food, I'll give you guys a list of things that you can purchase for them. Yeah, about 4 to 4:30. Because by the time you leave here at 1:30, you'll go to Macro. You'll be there about 2. By the time you get all this stuff and you load it up, it'll be like 3:30. And then by the time you get there, it'll be 4:30 to the orphanage. So I'll give you guys all the materials that you need for that, so we can chat. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the live stream. Thank you guys online for joining us, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class, and then we'll just stay here and kind of coordinate the excursion for today. So thank you all for joining. Okay.